Yeah.
It's Dave Lawrence, Hawaii Public Radio.
Hey, here we are. We're back.
You are the King Bee.
Yeah, man. It's going to be good.
All right, here we go. It is HPR, All Things Considered, and I'm Dave Lawrence. Welcoming back one of the coolest guests that a cat could truly have, Billy F Gibbons of ZZ Top. Of course, Billy F Gibbons and the BFGs, his raging solo affair, returning to town. It's going to be this weekend, Friday through Sunday at the Blue Note, the 17th through the 19th. It's 7 o'clock each night. And Billy, aloha and welcome back, my brother. Good to have you back on the show.
My man, it's not long overdue, but it's always overdue to catch up and compare notes because you guys got it going on.
Thank you, my friend. And we had so much fun when you were last on. Plus, hanging out with you, you did a little art on the guitar for me and stuff. And it's just, you know what's neat about this show? I just was poking around. It's kind of a new lineup, and at least you've got this set to join you, a cat who played drums for one incredible Texas guitar player, and now he's joining your BFGs.
Indeed. Chris Whipper-Layton, who I've known since his earliest foray out into the spotlight with Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble.
Yep.
And, of course, following that, another great success with the Archangels.
Yep.
And he has volunteered to bring his bad Texas Shuffle to join us for the opening of a few nights at the Blue Note with you guys in Honolulu coming right up.
Yeah, no, it's huge. 17th through the 19th. It's this weekend at 7 o'clock each night. And what's neat about this is it comes because, now that's the question would be, is this because Kenny Aronoff got hired to do the Sammy Hagar gig or whatever?
Yes. I spoke with Sammy and he said, sorry, I'm stealing Kenny away from the BFG. I said, well, let me see what happens. And of course, our mainstay, Mr. Mike Flanagan, who everybody refers to him as his nickname, the Drifter, Mike the Drifter Flanagan. He said, let me get Chris Whipper-Layton. He said, between the two of us, we'll create a platform. All you have to do is walk out there and bang on that six string, and we got it made. I said, okay, making loud noise.
I love it. I love that. Now, that's funny because you mentioned, you go all the way back with him. Now, before we, I guess the first part would be how far, when is the very first time, if you can recall, that you met Chris through Stevie?
Through Stevie. They had, Stevie's older brother, my good buddy Jimi Vaughan, who just joined us, the BFGs just recently did a 3-night run.
Birthday?
It was Chris Layton on drums, Mike Flanagan on keyboard and bass guitar. Jimi Vaughan stepped in to round out a nice little quartet. But we used to see Jimi when the Fabulous Thunderbirds were forming.
Wow.
It was shortly thereafter Stevie stepped out of the shadows with Double Trouble. So I guess it's fair to say our relationship with the Vaughan brothers team and all of that action that was unfolding at the time goes way back.
Yeah, and starts really, I guess, with Jimi. I get it, with the T-Birds. That makes sense. You know that you played, I don't know, you have so many gigs. I don't know if you'd remember this, but it was in March of 1987. You played at Aloha Stadium, and Stevie Ray Vaughan was your opening act at that show.
Man, I can't tell you what fond recollections that brings. Run DMC was on the bill.
That's right.
And between the three acts, we were just tearing it up and having a blast. I mean, there's no way you can't have a blast when you I don't know if it's being far from the mainland or what it is, but it's always a blast, always a big blast.
What a show. And so you can, and did you, when you were doing that, was that a one-off kind of deal, or had you done a lot of gigs with him over the years where he and the band were on the bill with ZZ Top?
Yeah, we came and went many times. Of cross paths. In fact, I remember we were playing an early ZZ Top show had unfolded in Texas. Stevie Ray was announced to be in the audience, and somebody said, he's getting to be quite a guitar player. You ought to let him come up and bang on the box. And Frank Beard, who is from the Dallas area that grew up close to the Vaughans, he said, "Man, we ought to give Stevie a shot here. Let's let him show us what he's got. We keep hearing good things about him." So from the very beginnings, I guess that our admiration for Stevie and what he accomplished is still standing tall, man.
And y'all invited him right up out of the crowd to come on stage with ZZ at this gig?
Right out of the clear blue, and out of the clear blue he came and blew off the roof. He did.
Wow, that is. And you know what else I was realizing? I realized you both had that hat thing going. You ever thought about that? You both have a unique thing with the hat.
Yeah, that was
different kind of hat, but both into the hat.
Yeah, he said, he said we go good together with these hats. And I said, what do you mean? He said I got this flat Spanish looking thing, and he said yours curls up on the side, that Western thing. He said, and we don't bump into each other. That's good. That works.
That's some funny stuff. And, it goes with your new recent touring that you were just doing. You had this all-star birthday jam, and it made me think of, when I think of Stevie, I guess I was thinking of some of the great, you had Alice in Chains, Jerry Cantrell there with you. You were covering Rooster, and you had Slash from Guns N' Roses covering Willie Dixon's Hoochie Coochie, man. And it made me think, wow, over your long career, did you get the pleasure of ever running into Willie Dixon?
Oh, yeah. There's a delightful photograph. We had gathered in Chicago for an art opening, and it was recollections from around the planet of individuals that had some thread, a connective thread to the early days of Chess Records, Chess and Checkered, the Chess Brothers.
Wow.
And we'd been invited to go up, and sure enough, Willie Dixon was there. And we had just come off of we had done a opening slot with Freddie King and the Muddy Waters Band. And Willie Dixon had heard about it, and he said, well, he said, now that we're friends, now that we're pals, he said, next time you go out, you better call me. He said, I'm still ready to whip up on the bass. I said, okay, man.
Did you ever end up playing with him? No.
We stayed in touch. We had a couple of. We wrote a song together.
Wow. Oh boy.
Unfortunately, he passed away shortly thereafter. This was one of our longstanding heroes. That we're talking about an inspiration. When you speak of ZZ Top and the BFG and Jimmy Vaughan, Stevie Ray Vaughan, all of the rock blues consortium, we consider ourselves lucky to be interpreters.
Sure. And
the really special moments is when we got to cross paths with the originators. Big inspiration.
Oh, bro, we just had, it's funny you talk like that, because Foghat came through, and Roger Earl, the original drummer, came to the studio, did this long chat, and one of his amazing stories is the late 70s Foghat were doing 3 nights in Chicago at that amphitheater, and he said on the first night, Willie's daughter came to visit them backstage because, as you know, they had covered I Just Want to Make Love to You. That was one of their songs that they had done. Second night, it was Willie's daughter and son. And then the third night, it was Willie and his children all came down, and they invited them to come back. And a couple months later, Roger and Lonesome Dave and one of the other guys in the band, forgive me, I forget his name, they all got to go to Willie's house and have dinner. And Willie would send the kids up to the attic to grab the 78s and bring them down. And Roger had this funny story because he's like mimicking it. He said Lonesome Dave would just stand there holding the 78s, staring at him. Like.
Oh yeah, God, a record spinning bash. What a bonus.
Right.
Well, you're touching on some of those important moments. People say, well, what gave you the inspiration? Are there any moments that were influential? I'd say all of them. All of that stuff just it adds up to getting to do what you get to do.
Oh man, I mean, and what's interesting is if you looked at it like the yin and yang or the two halves, not that there's only two halves, but a part of the ZZ sound and a part of your voice, which is so ubiquitous on the radio to this day. I imagine that every single moment, if you think of the vast number of classic rock, classic hit, and active rock stations that play ZZ Top, I'd be willing to bet you across North America at every single moment, 24/7, your voice is being heard. And half of that sound would be the blues guys like the Willie and the Muddy, that sort of thing. But another part of it, and we talked last time, and we got all these great stories, and I never asked about that other half, which is you were in this band, pre-ZZ Top, the Moving Sidewalks, and it brought you into the life of Jimi Hendrix. And you think about how your sound is molded on not just the originators, but then that other group of originators that were right in your peer group. Tell us that yarn, Mr. Storyteller, how you first hooked up to him and what it really meant to you.
Yeah. We had a girlfriend with the Moving Sidewalks had just released a single that caught on, entitled 99th Floor, and it started making the rounds. And the next thing you know, we were keeping close tabs on what was coming out of England at the time. They seemed to be shaking up the world with what we could refer to, I think it's fair to say, call it the British invasion, which it was. It was coming from all sides. One of our girlfriends had become a fashion model, hired to go to London, and she sent us back. She would send us love notes. Oh, we miss you guys. We miss you guys. And one day, a large package came, and it contained a vinyl LP, and we unwrapped it, revealing this thing called the Jimi Hendrix Experience. And I said, wow, what is this? It had yet to be released in the States. And I remember the four members of the Moving Sidewalks, we had gathered around the turntable. We must have stared at that spinning platter for 4 hours in semi-disbelief. And it was so inspiring. We heard exactly what you're talking about. We heard an interpreter he was the interpreter before we were thinking of interpreting.
Right.
He had been part of the originators. And it was coming through loud and clear by way of all the way from the British Isles back to the States.
Right.
Very unusual. And but it was at the same time very inspirational. In fact, it prompted the Moving Sidewalks to pick up, and we learned Purple Haze and Foxy Lady.
Ooh.
Nobody else had heard it.
Whoa! It was an edge. You had an edge.
Shortly thereafter, we got a phone call. We had a manager was kind of curious. They called up and they said, "Hey, we've got an invitation to join this thing called the Jimi Hendrix Experience. we don't know too much about it. Of course, we had already been. We said, Jimmy, are you crazy? Yeah, let's go. So we hopped aboard and joined up with Jimmy and the gang. At the time, Chaz Chandler, the original bass player for the Animals, Eric Burdon and the Animals, became Jimmy's manager. And it was a small group. It was Chaz Chandler and his wife Pidge, Jerry Stickles, and Nigel was one of the equipment handlers. Very small group, but we all made fast friends. And I remember the first night, the promoter came back and he was very fussy. He said, I want to make sure that I get 45 minutes out of you guys. You got to kind of warm this show up, and but the only way we could play 45 minutes was to include Purple Haze and Foxy Lady before Jimi Hendrix came. And I remember we were playing along, and out of the corner of my eye, I kept seeing this figure off in the shadows, a guy standing there with his arms folded. And sure enough, we walked off stage, and this guy grabbed me by the shoulder, spun me, and he said, "Man, I want to get to know you. You got a lot of nerve." I said, "Oh, you're Jimi Hendrix." And man, we bonded at that moment and kept the fires lit until the day died. It was quite something.
That's such a valuable story that you would share that for all the people who are going to get to forever hear that. How did you stay in that era? Because today, like I've spent time with you, you got your phone and stuff. You can reach out to anybody you want on that thing at any second. You're in your hotel, a restaurant, anywhere. How did back in that era did one stay in touch? Like how did you and he develop a relationship where you could still talk to each other in that era of limited phones and everything?
Well, it was limited. It was a long-distance call every now and again. We would stay. We could follow the tour. We knew where that was going, and we knew who to ask for at the end of a long-distance line. And 9 times out of 10, it'd be, "Oh yeah, hang on a second," and we'd stay. Hang on the line for a minute, and somebody'd run down the hall. "Yeah, man." But yeah, it was quite a warming thing. I had a buddy from Memphis, Robert Mintman Johnson, and Robert was also friends with that whole Hendrix gang, and it's through Robert that he facilitated some of the long-standing associations that he had with Jimi Hendrix and what they were doing, and what I was fascinated with. I remember at the time we'd check into a hotel, and it was Jimmy was also requesting to be put at the very end of the hall. Didn't matter where we were, and he'd say, "I'm taking the left end, you take the right end." And the doors were always open. And the reason he wanted to always be at the far end is usually there'd be a few empty rooms, and Jerry Stickles and Nigel were assigned to bring in this piece of furniture called a record player, this giant thing. And Jimmy would hail. He'd call me from across the hall. And he said, "Come on in here." He said, "Help me out with this." And he said, "How do you think he's doing this?" I said, "What are you listening to?" It was the Jeff Beck group.
Whoa!
The original Jeff, Rod Stewart singing. Yeah. That was Mickey Waller on drums, Ron Wood on bass, Nicky Hopkins on piano. I said, "Jimmy, I got news for you." I said, "You're trying to figure out what Jeff Beck is doing. Jeff Beck is trying to figure out what you're doing."
Was he the cat who turned you on to him, or had you already known of Jeff?
I had met Jeff earlier.
Okay, so you already knew of him.
'68.
Okay.
I'd met Jeff Beck earlier. In fact, I was just talking with Jeff Beck's manager yesterday, and there's a big auction of a lot of Jeff Beck's personal effects, guitars and pieces of really exotic equipment that Jeff used over the years. I think it's either Christie's auction house or perhaps it's Julian's.
Wow.
They're getting ready for a big event. But the stories that connected us all through Jeff Beck, Jimi Hendrix. The funny thing is, here was Jimi Hendrix trying to learn what Jeff Beck was doing on record. Jeff Beck, of course, was probably doing the same thing, vice versa. Jeff had played early on using a Gibson Les Paul, and then, of course, seeing Jimi Hendrix doing what he did on that drove Jeff Beck to jumping ship and embracing the Fender Stratocaster.
Right. Yeah, no.
And I guarantee, I was talking to Jeff Beck one night, and he said, imagine the inventors of the Stratocaster back in the early 50s. He said they never had a clue what Jimi Hendrix would be doing with it.
Right. No, I mean, that's such a, and that's a fascinating connection, though, with him, that story of you being brought into the room and him earnestly trying to figure out how Jeff's making those noises. And to just think of those two, you put it really well, because no doubt the admiration was mutual, I guess, is what I was searching for. When you get, like, you got to be part of we talked briefly, just in a mention, that you were part of that Jeff Beck tribute that had been at Royal Albert Hall. Clapton seemed to be in charge of it, but everybody under the sun was there. But dialing back to the beginning, you said you met him in '68. In the same way of the world being so long distance and everybody's sort of in a different place at a different time working, how did you develop a relationship with Jeff that would lead to all these years later, when he's gone, that you're there at that show?
Wow. We were still down in Texas, and the Jeff Beck group got hired to make the round San Antonio, Houston, up to Dallas, and we still laugh today. They got to San Antonio, and we were there to open the show, the Moving Sidewalks.
Mm-hmm.
And at the conclusion of the event, it turned out that Jeff Beck's outfit had forgotten to rent a vehicle to haul their gear to the next gig. Well, we had spare room in the truck, and I said, well, hell, just go ahead and load up. We got plenty of room. Come on.
Oh, wow.
And we all piled into this van, pulling a little equipment trailer, going from, we went from San Antonio up to Houston, Texas, all the way up to Dallas. And through those, and of course, Jeff Beck was saying, Billy, what is this weird food? Mexican. It was, I thought we'd wind up talking about guitar changes. He said he was quite fascinated with different styles of cuisine.
Wow.
It was very strange.
Well, but you had stories to tell, and you had actually lived in Mexico as a kid for a little while. Did that ever come? I mean, that must lend itself to being useful in that kind of conversation.
Oh yeah, yeah. And little known fact. Well, a few Jeff Beck stalwart followers probably know this back and forth. Jeff's Jeff prowess, having been kind of the lead man for the Yardbirds when they had those great songs, For Your Love and Happenings 10 Years Time Ago. Jeff had a fascination with early rock and roll, which spilled over to country, and of course it took in blues. Jeff could play the theme song for the Beverly Hillbillies with his eyes closed. And he could play both parts. Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs combined. It was another testament to the great prowess that Jeff held over the instrument.
Wow. And so you stay buds till how does it end up that you're there? Did you say, I want to be at this? Do they call you to be at that tribute show? Because it says a lot about the relationship too, just about the whole, I get it. What you're saying is you loaned them space. You were nice to them in the beginning. You did them a solid when they needed it. That helps explain it. But how does it stay alive through 2023?
Well, yeah, through the years, Jeff and I spoke quite frequently, not about guitars per se. That was kind of an aside. The main focus was on hot rodding an automobile.
Okay.
He and I both, we were fascinated with what you could do with a wrench and a torch. And Jeff was not shy about grabbing either one. In fact, I want to say that his lovely bride, Sandra, may consider putting up for grabs a couple of the hot rod roadsters that Jeff hand built.
Oh, wow.
He was closely aligned in San Francisco with the great hot rodder, Mr. Roy Brizio. And Roy gave Jeff a few pointers, but it was to our sheer amazement that Jeff Beck would, it goes to no surprise. Jeff Beck could wrench on a car as easily as he dove in and remodified the Fender Stratocaster. The whammy bar on a Stratocaster coming out of the factory runs at 18 degrees. Jeff figured out a way to make it drop to 33 degrees. That's how he got some of those insane sounds.
Wow.
But that was Jeff. He was a tinkerer, and he was a wrench man. Wasn't afraid to tearing something up to see if it would work. That's
a great insight into the sound, though, and the bending on that and the whammy bar stuff. That that says a whole bunch. He was on one of his very last recordings before he passed away. He did couple songs on Ozzy Osbourne's most recent studio record. And there are some of those, when you talk about the whammy bar, it just made me think of those solos. There's one that was almost like a ballad song, something about shadows. It was a very powerful kind of softer song. And Jeff, when he hits those things, so that's just hearing that he adjusted. That's the kind of stuff that you only hear from a cat like yourself. And that's a neat way of looking at the combination between the blues guys and then these guys, and thinking of yourself, how you turned out. One final question, then I'll let you go because your time is super valuable. Do you have time for one more question, Billy?
Oh yeah,
right,
man.
Cool.
You've lit the fuse.
Oh, I like that. Then I'm trying because I really am a huge fan. There's so many ways that you've influenced, and like I said about the radio, I think that's context for people listening. When I said your voice is on the radio somewhere right now, there's so many of these songs. It's been so long, but one part of it that's funny. You talked about the Cars as a way that you bonded, you stayed in his life, and you never did answer. So how did you get on that gig? Did they call you or you call him? How did you get to the Royal Albert Hall gig? Before I do this question,
Sandra, Jeff's lovely wife, and Jeff's close personal assistant, Mr. Sean Hartman, decided to put together a fitting tribute to the guy that we all looked up to in ways that are still being talked about. I remember Clapton was adamant. He said, "We must do this. We must bring our inner soulful nature that's calling and make it a thing," which we did. Johnny Depp's he and Jeff worked closely toward the end.
Yep.
ZZ Top. Somebody said, "How does Billy F Gibbons and ZZ Top and Jeff Beck and Johnny Depp? And we wound up. It was quite the night. I shared a dressing room with Kirk Hammett of Metallica. Ronnie Wood was in there. Imelda May. She got up and sang some great stuff. But talk about a moving evening. I don't think that there was much left to say after everybody had paid tribute to a guy that had lent his talents and creativity to open the doors for so many of us in so many different ways. It was really, really great.
No, it was huge, and that answers it. So they made sure and they reached out to you, and I mean that was and there's a great screenshot when I was watching one of the jams. It's Kirk Hammett on the left side of the screen, John McLaughlin in the middle, and you on the right. And it's like you talk about the most wild array. You just said it. I mean, they were covering their bases. But the thing, my final question was, when I think about the way that you answered how you connected with Jeff, which was personal lifestyle stuff, which was cars and doing kind things when someone needed a favor, which developed, your friendship, it sounds like. And so the final question would be, a lot of the time I try to bring topics out of guests like yourself that I think will cross over to people who don't even know anything about ZZ Top, but will love listening to your storytelling because we'll talk about things they might connect on in treating people right or whatever it would be. So it was the mid-'70s. They called it the Worldwide Texas Tour. And just to blow a few people's minds, because most people listening to All Things Considered probably don't know what you did, but can you run down some of your favorite live animals that accompanied you on that tour?
Oh, man. It's funny you should bring that up. Our dear friend Ralph Fisher, who was the handler of this menagerie. And I must say, we were all a little bit jealous from the time that ZZ Top's Worldwide Texas Tour back in 1976. It was a dream production, stage cut out, shaped like the state of Texas, leaned at an angle so everybody could see a Texas Longhorn steer, a tamed buffalo, javelina pig, 2 live rattlesnakes under plexiglass. I mean, talk about insane. And they got treated better than anybody on the tour. These critters got the high card. It was great.
Right. You had to hire, you had major veterinarians and the whole, right? Like they were these animals. I mean, they had a buffalo, if folks can believe. You have to watch the videos. There's some of this on YouTube. Not enough, I must say, because it's really stunning. But and vultures, I guess they were, or some kind of huge bird too, right?
Oh yeah, 2 turkey buzzards.
2 turkey buzzards.
One of them is still living. Can you believe it?
Whoa!
It's the oldest living turkey buzzard. She's her name is Oscar. Odd name for a female, but nonetheless, still flapping her wings, ready to go on tour.
How did you keep in touch with Oscar?
Oh, Ralph Fisher is a world-renowned a fixture in rodeo circuits.
Okay.
He was one of the famed, I guess you call it a rodeo clown. He would be out there ready to save the day. If a cowboy got thrown and was in danger, Ralph would come to the rescue.
And distract the animal. Right.
He knew how to divert.
And that's what I'm talking about. That is the kind of background that he's drawing from. Billy F. Gibbons from ZZ Top, starting tomorrow through Sunday at the Blue Note with his BFGs right here in Honolulu.
That leads me up to getting back to the BFG appearance at the Blue Note coming up. And you can tell me this, the month of January is usually when the North Shore is breaking. Any word on Waimea? Is it going to be something to see?
Oh, you're going to be going up there, and the Eddie Aikau just happened. That's the big surf tournament with the 30 to 40s. So I would guess that even if that isn't kind of happening, yes, there's going to be massive, massive waves and too much to get in the water, my man. You better have to just hang on the shore there because that stuff is way too dangerous to be taken.
Oh, yeah. I lived there for a short time in the 70s, me and Billy Clayton, and we had three of us shared a little place.
You lived on the North Shore?
It was on the east end of the North Shore. We knew. We made friends with Dale Velzy, which was Velzy Land was named after one of the early surfboard shapers.
Wow!
And Sunset was always breaking, Pipeline, you name it. It was such a scene.
What years were you here? When was this?
73, 74.
Oh, my Lord. And you were here living full-time on Oahu?
Well, yeah, kind of coming and going because I would fly to the mainland to
work.
Pick up a ZZ run. In fact, I had a girlfriend that called me up and said, "Oh, my gosh," she said, "are you checking on your house?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She goes, "Well, I talked to your buddies. They're away." And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm back on the mainland. What's up?" She goes, "Well, I think your car," I had a little Subaru, some Japanese car. We all shared the car keys were always available. She goes, I think your car wants to go home." So what are you talking about? She goes, "Well, the water has risen up and your car is floating out to sea."
Oh, my Lord.
And I said, "Oh, it is? Well, what do you mean it's going home?" She goes, "Well, the left turn blinker light is on. It looks like it's going back to Japan." Oh, man.
Too funny.
Crazy.
Too funny, and that's a great little bit to wrap on. I don't know how many people would even believe that, but so much fun. Did you have fun telling stories today ahead of this unbelievable run? It is the Blue Note Hawaii, ladies and gentlemen. Billy F. Gibbons of ZZ Top, of course, the Billy F. Gibbons and BFGs band, and they are this weekend, the 17th through the 19th, Friday through Sunday at 7 o'clock each night. And did you have fun? Was this okay?
You know it's right, and I'll leave you with this. It's Billy F. Gibbons. Going to look forward to seeing you at the Blue Note. I said, have mercy.
Love it, my brother. God bless. You stay safe.
Okay, man. Thanks.
I'll see you soon.
See you then.
Aloha.